Hey, welcome back to the Paperstac podcast. So excited today. Brett's not with us today, but I have Tiffany Pantozzi from Align Real Estate, a real estate professional at its peak right now. She is been in the industry a long time. She's coming in today, going to ask us some questions about investing in mortgage notes. You've got a huge client list.
Absolutely.
And so we're really excited. She's got some interesting questions lined up. Stay tuned. You're really going to love what we have for you.
Okay, so we're getting to know all about Paperstac today. So let's start with the basic. What is Paperstac?
So at its core, Paperstac it's a marketplace that allows people to buy and sell. That's what it looks like on the shell, but it's so much more. It's a technology. It's an automated workflow. So think about when you go to buy a piece of real estate, where do you go to close it?
A title company.
Title company, exactly.
Okay.
So for the note space, there's nothing available out there. And so Paperstac, not only is it a marketplace, but it's a transaction process that takes you from the time you do your bidding, your offering, signing contracts, holding escrow, collateral audits, everything happens right on the platform.
Full service, A to Z.
Full service, A to Z, from the time you're offering to the time it closes.
Amazing. So explain to me the services. So you just kind of went through them. Explain to me the services, because in a traditional transaction, I'm the realtor, I'll put it under contract. Then we'll be working with the transaction coordinator, the title team, maybe the mortgage company, the lender, things like that, and then taking it to the closing. So explain your services a little bit more.
So like I said, we've got the marketplace, and a lot of a big part of buying and selling notes is like the countering, the offers, the counter offers. So we handle much what an agent would do, of handling that counter offering back and forth digitally. And then when it's come times for the contracts, we've got a standardized contract. In real estate in Florida, we've got the FAR bar, right? So Paperstac has standardized that contract.
So you're going to use the same contract we would use?
No. We have a standardized contract for notes.
Okay,
right?
for notes, separate. Okay.
Because prior to this, everybody would have a different contract. And so there was no two contracts for the same. What does that mean? Well, you have to bring in attorneys, which makes things get more expensive. And they take up more time. So we've standardized the contract part of it. Pretty much every step along the way that you do when you're buying and selling, we've standardized. So draft the contracts. Escrow is a big part of it. When I started buying and selling notes, there was no concept of escrow. You kind of sent your money to the seller before you actually
cross your fingers?
Kind of cross your fingers before you had the collateral file. So you can imagine.
Oh, no.
I'm like, well, look, I don't want to send you money until you send me the files.
Absolutely.
And they're like, well, I'm not sending you the files until you send me the money. So you've got this catch-22, and it was a huge barrier of entry.
Why wouldn't they send you the files until they had the money?
Because if they sent you the files, and they're like, well, now you hold the collateral file, and that's like you hold the mortgage, the note. So if you hold the mortgage and the note, that's where the money, that's what everything's tied up in.
Okay, interesting.
And so
it's like signing over the deed?
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. So exactly. So obviously you're not going to sign over the deed to a new buyer until we have the funds.
We don't do that. Right?
Understood. So that's that piece that you need to connect.
Right. Okay. And so what we did is we put into the services escrow. So as a buyer, I'm sending my money to escrow.
You feel safe, it's secure.
Feel safe. Well, as a seller, now I'm sending my collateral file to a third-party auditor.
Like a title company.
Right, and they're going to go through and they're going to look at the collateral file. They're going to make sure that everything's original, or is
fraud,
or is it copies?
Which I'm sure you come across.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And so we've basically taken what was a very opaque process, and we've made it very transparent, and we've added so much security to it.
And there's no other company doing something like that?
No, there's not. There's other marketplaces. It's super easy to put out a marketplace, right? It's like a billboard, Craigslist. Anybody can kind of do that.
Okay.
You can go on and use Pix or WordPress and make sort of a marketplace. But to have the automation, the workflow, we handle all communication. So I'm sure there's other there's services out there like Quora or something like that for title companies. But when you're closing mortgage notes, it was typically all your communication happened through email or spreadsheets. I don't know what your email box looks like. Mine is insane.
Right.
And so when I'm trying to find a certain piece of what I said here, it was always tough. I was like, okay, where did we say this in this email? If there's 3 or 4 transactions going on with the same person, forget about it, right? You get lost. So Paperstac has what we call total communication.
Okay.
So you communicate on the platform and the chat message things, and it happens on a timeline, just like you would have on Facebook. You got a timeline, same thing on Paperstac. Emails. If you get notified from the platform through your email, you can respond to the email, goes onto your platform or goes onto the platform.
So even all data, all communications in one place
phone calls.
to really truly track the life of the transaction.
Right. So I can push a button, make a phone call on the platform. It will call my counterparty. It calls me.
And track it.
It records it. And then it transcribes it and it puts it on your timeline.
Recording and transcribing, I wish I had that for real estate.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so then you do that part of it and you take them all the way through the closing of the mortgage note.
Yep, we handle the servicing transfer, and then we handle drafting the assignment, the launch, and that's what kind of transfers the note and the mortgage.
Is there any sort of insurance policy again to ensure that you're transferring a legitimate note, that everything is protected, just like in real estate with title?
Well, so you can order title, obviously title searches, but you can also order title policies.
In addition. So it's not something that's traditionally done all the time, but it's for a comfort level of a buyer.
Right. And typically what will happen is people will order a title search. So it's called an O&E search, an ownership and encumbrance search. And that'll tell you, look, is my chain of title complete? And if it is, and there was a prior title policy on there, it usually transfers. But we know title is from this point backwards. It's not from this point forwards.
Right.
Like homeowners insurance is from this point forwards. Title insurance is the opposite, this point backwards. So a lot of buyers will go ahead and say, look, I need a new title policy from this point back covering me.
And would you issue that, or would you work with a third-party title company to do that?
Well, our third-party escrow company is a nationwide title company.
Okay,
so
there you go. So they protect it. They can do that service as well. And is that something that you suggest, especially for somebody new to this? Like, I would be very nervous to purchase my first note. So is that something you suggest be added on to each of these, notes?
What I would do is there's third-party services out there that will come in and they'll actually close the loan for you. And they'll go in, they'll look over your documents for you, they'll check title, they'll handle all that stuff. So I don't necessarily buy title policies, and I don't necessarily recommend it. I do recommend if it's your first time, get somebody who's done this and somebody that actually is providing it as a service, because then you can feel comfortable that if something does go wrong, if somebody to go back on. And then, of course, if there was never a title policy, yes, I would get a title policy.
So what is the biggest risk with buying a mortgage note?
The biggest risk. So some of the things I've run into is the loan is still intact. It maybe is non-performing, but the property has been sold to tax deed. So if that happens, you have really unsecured debt. But it's like real estate, it's insurable, right? So if the property burns down, it's insured. You get your money back. The title is usually insured. So if there's a title defect and you've got title policy on there, you're good. It's insured. So it's always about there's risk in everything, right? In all investing, but it's not like it's tied to a hard asset like real estate. So it's the risk is minimalized, I think.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let's find our next question. So, if you were going to define what a mortgage note is, what exactly is a mortgage note?
So there's actually important. There's a mortgage and then there's a note. The mortgage is what collateralizes the property. The note is the IOU. So they're two separate documents. So whenever you go to buy a house, if you don't have cash, the bank gives you a loan, and the note is the loan, and it's going to have all the details like, what's your interest rate, what's your payment, all that stuff. The mortgage is what says, if you don't pay on your note, what's my recourse? And so that's what ties the property and attaches it to the note, and allows you then, and in the mortgage, it's got all the rules for what you have to do to take the property back. Like each mortgage, it's kind of the same, but there's also sometimes they're a little different, and it'll tell you the rules you have to play by to foreclose on somebody. Okay,
so I understand now what the mortgage note is. Now, why would somebody buy a mortgage note?
So a lot of times people who are maybe in the landlord game, they're tired of toilets and sinks, they're tired of fixing stuff, they're tired of the phone calls. They might have an agent who's handling it, but still, it all rolls back to them. So investing in debt allows you to have the same sort of benefits of rental property, but it does. But when somebody's AC goes out and they owe you on the mortgage, they don't call the bank and say, "Hey, the AC's broken. Can you come fix it?" It's like, "Hey, pay me my money, or or not, or you're
Right.
going to have to take the house back.
Right.
So it's a way to invest and get passive income without actually doing the real estate thing.
Interesting. Just to clarify, the difference between investing in traditional real estate and investing in a mortgage note, give me that exact explanation.
So there's several little nuances. I'll do kind of the positive. Like for me, like real estate, I like real estate as well. I like both investing, but it's one of the benefits of maybe real estate over note investing is when I buy real estate, theoretically, it's going to be appreciating in value, right? Whether it's 2% a year or 3% a year.
If you buy right, that's it.
15% a year or whatever right now has been bananas. A mortgage is actually the exact opposite, right? Because you could buy a mortgage, it's $100,000. The minute they make one payment, it's worth $99,950.
Right, because they're paying it down.
They're paying it down.
Right. You only benefit in this scenario with the mortgage notes when they don't pay it.
No, you benefit. You definitely benefit when they pay because, mortgages are front end loaded with interest, right? So if you make $1,000 payment on your mortgage and it's kind of a newer mortgage,
it's not going down. You're just paying down the interest.
You're knocking $40 off.
Right, yeah.
Right? And so the nice thing about mortgage debt is you can get in there, you can put in, say you buy something for $90,000 that's worth $100, you get a little 10% discount to buy it, and you collect 3 years worth of payments. Well, you can pretty much turn around and sell it for kind of close to what you bought it for, and so you do your return. It's a pretty sick return. There's some other things, like I said, the passive side where you don't have to be as involved on the.
But you're still collecting.
But you're still collecting. But
so explain that to me. So I buy a mortgage note. Let's just use $100,000 for the easy numbers, and I buy it, and I'm not just buying things that people are in default with. Am I like?
No.
Right. So you can buy something that's very healthy as well.
You buy performing, buy non-performing. There's tons of people who have self-directed like IRAs or 401ks that they're like buying these mortgage notes and they're just throwing them right into their.
So I become the bank?
You become the bank.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so that makes it simple. So let's think about it this way. So I buy a mortgage note, I become the bank.
Right.
Instead of the bank holding that note, I'm now holding that note. So now when the owner needs to pay their mortgage, they're paying me.
Right, but they're probably not going to pay you because you've probably hired somebody.
Right, to deal with it all.
Just like you would hire a property manager, you hire a loan manager, and they're called loan servicers. And so they will manage your...
Collect the payment. So in the event that the owner doesn't pay, then I could put them into default.
Correct.
And
you send them
after so long, I can, based on the mortgage terms, right?
Yep.
I can say, well, you missed X amount of payments, and now I'm going to take back your home. I mean, that's in super simple terms.
Super simple terms. You go through like the foreclosure process, and there's like judicial versus non-judicial.
So you're kind of betting on people not paying your mortgage when buying mortgage notes.
No. You
Okay.
want. I mean, there's two schools of thought. You can buy a performing one, so you're looking for I am looking for passive income. I don't. I want.
And everybody loves passive income, so that's such a trigger word today, and that's why I'm like, tell me more about this passive income.
Or you come from where I came from. I came from the real estate space.
Right, which I'm in the real estate space. So again, always looking at different ways to create more income, better understanding, of different opportunities to invest in.
Right. And I can tell you a little bit how I got into the space and why the transition from real estate to notes is easy.
Yes.
So for me, I was buying and selling real estate at the time. And I had an REO agent, a bank agent, come up and say, hey, are you interested in buying a note? And I'm like, I've heard about it. I'll take a look. And it was a frame duplex in Winter Garden on, I think it was Main Street. And the debt was $90,000, and this was 2012. And so I said, what do they want for it? He goes, I think it's going to be around 20. And I was like, tell him I'll give him $8,000, right? And the agent's yelling at me through the phone, and I was like, tell him $8,000. And so he came back. He's like, I can't believe this. They countered you at $8,400. And I go, I'll take it.
But why would they do that?
Because this was 2012, right? So they were
trying to unload
There's piles,
certain things,
and so you were
right.
buying stuff in 2012 at 8 to 10 cents on the dollar.
How many did you buy back in 2012?
Oh my gosh, we bought so many because I was like, wow, this is an easier way to get real estate.
Right.
So we got it. The lady signed the house over to us, and we put it back on the market to resell it. And I had it sold for $38,000. And this all happened in like 14 days. From the time I like put the money out to buy the note till the time that I was like, my title company goes, hey, how do I know that you own this?
Right.
And I had literally closed 400 real estate transactions with them. And so like, I need to know that you own this. I'm like, well, I don't know. How would you know? They're like, the assignment of mortgage? I'm like, what the hell is that?
Right.
I didn't even know, but we ended up getting the document. So that's how I kind of got into it. And I was like, nobody else around Orlando was doing it.
Right.
So we're like, let's do that again. And so we just started buying and selling debt. It was just so
interesting.
it was like, wow, this is great.
So really that's what mortgage notes are, is buying and selling debt.
It's buying and selling debt. And we got into it because it was a cheaper way to buy property. And I was like, I was trying to get the real estate.
Right.
That was my goal.
So again, like let's just say somebody does stop paying for whatever reason, there is a little bit of benefit to you at that point because then you could acquire the property.
Of course.
Right.
Like that is always the nice thing about buying debt is there's so many different exit strategies. You can buy the debt, you can hold it, you can resell it. If they stop paying, you can take the house back. There's like 3 or 4 different ways you can actually get the house back through like foreclosure or deed in lieu.
So you're making money from you buy the note, and if you buy it right, you're making money because there's a little bit of meat on the bone. Let's just say right based on what they're paying you on a monthly amount, you're benefiting from that every month, every year because you bought in right. Or in the event they default, you essentially can acquire the property.
And it all kind of hinges on like what yield are you looking for, but like, and that ties into what's the interest rate. Like some are 6%, some are 9%. I've got one right now, an owner finance deal that we're probably gonna buy. It's 16.99% interest rate.
When did they get this loan?
They got it like a year and a half ago.
Who gets rates at that? Who even signs up for that?
But it's an owner finance deal. So what happens is you get people that are unbankable. They're like, look, I can't get a loan on this house.
The owner decides to.
And they're like, look, I'll hold paper.
Financing.
I'll offer you financing on it. And so you get people like this guy's in construction and he did work on the house. He fixed it up, and it's it was $55,000 house at the time. He put down $10,000. The house is worth like $130,000, $140,000 now. So it's got a huge equity position. And so it's like, okay, and it's a 16.99% interest rate. You're like, I have to overpay to, even if I was like, I'm good with the 12%. It was like, well, you got to pay more than the balance on it. So it always ties into the interest rate, and you can get some really good deals. Like if it's a 8% interest rate and you buy it at a 20% discount, like your yield goes way double digits.
So what are you thinking about buying that one at? So it's 16% interest rate.
16.99. The balance on it is 43 and change, and I think we're gonna end up getting it somewhere between. We tried 34, but we're gonna pay 40 for it.
And what's the rate gonna be?
It's around a 19% return.
So it goes up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. If you buy it at a discount, yeah, it's like a 19% return.
Interesting. Okay, well, we can dig more into that as well.
Yeah, it's huge.
That's a lot of, we can break that down on another video. You were about to mention it, but tell me your story a little bit. How did you get into note investing exactly?
So it was, oh man. So
it was the one in Winter Garden.
The one in Winter Garden, but before that I had heard about note investing, and so I was actually talking to my dad, who's an attorney in town, about it. I'm like, I'm thinking about doing note investing. He goes, oh, well, we represent a small community bank. I can put you in touch with them. I don't know doing anything. I said, sure, do that. So I reached out to him. It was a small bank out of Deltona. And I said, do you guys have any distressed debt you want to unload? And they go, yes, we have some vacant land over in Windermere, right at the corner of 535. I'm sure you're familiar with it, where the Publix is, just past Stony Brook, right? And I was like, yeah, I'll take a look at it. And so it was... I want to say it was like $4 million in debt, and I had them down to $600,000. And they were like, we'll take $600,000 for it.
What?
So I was looking at it, and I go, okay. And I was gonna pull the trigger on it, but I was gonna have to bring in a partner on it. This was like, wow, this is like 15 years, 12 years ago, maybe. I don't know. It was it was about 12 years ago. And the partner I was going to bring in, he was like, yeah, I'll do the deal with you. But he not screwed me over, but he had kind of taken my guys that I'd done deals with them in the past. And I was just like, this guy may screw me. So I ended up not pulling the trigger. Well, it's where Windermere High School sits now. The school board came in, and I think they paid it at foreclosure auction, paid like $3 million for it.
So that would have been a massive return for you.
Yeah, I said that was my 2 comma mistake. I was like, it was a double comma mistake.
Everybody has those, though.
Yeah, you live and learn. So I was like,
after that, you were like, okay, eyes are open. Let me learn more about this.
So when somebody asked me about the notes, I was like, yeah, I'll definitely do it.
How did you even fall into that opportunity, though? That's so crazy.
That one?
Yeah.
It was just. We owned a wholesale company, right? We had an office here. We had an office in St. Pete. We had 30 sales guys. I think we did like 400 to 500 houses from 2008 till the end of 11. And so we were just constantly turning and burning. And when you're doing that
Deals
much,
were just coming across your table.
When you do that much volume, like people just throw random stuff. Hey, would you do this? Would you look at that? And I was always like, yeah, I'll take a look at it. So, I was just always, we had people working for us. So it's like, what's next? Where are we going to keep, stay ahead of everybody, And so it was like notes. And, when I got the first note, I remember going around and like asking people, I'm like, hey, have you guys ever bought a note or anything like that? They're like, no, I don't know. I don't talk about it.
That must have been scary though, like being one of the first people to really dig your,
It was, but it was like, I looked at it, I go, it's $8,000, $8,400.
It's a very minimal investment and loss and risk.
And I knew the area. I was like, we just sold a house around the corner for like $24,000, right? So I was like, I know roughly what it's worth. So I was like, let's take a stab at it, and see what happens. And we did it, and we got in and out in 14 days. And we're like, holy cow.
14 days. So you bought it, and then you resold it.
Yeah, but from the time that we put out money to buy the loan, and like we kind of stepped over a few things probably that we shouldn't have done. That I didn't know any better, which doesn't make it right. But like you're not supposed to reach out to the borrowers before you actually own the loan, and even then you're supposed to wait like 45 days. There's a cooling off period before you can reach out to them.
Okay.
So we kind of reached out to the borrower before we bought the loan and said, "Hey, I'm buying this loan. Are you interested in signing the house over?" And she goes, "I got 5 foreclosures going on right now. I'm happy. I don't need another one." So we're like, perfect. We bought the loan, met her the day we sent the money out. She signed the house over to us. And then we put it on the MLS the next day. And it was literally, I was waiting for title to come back. And
so you put it on the MLS? You can put those on the MLS?
Yeah, because she had signed the house over to me. I owned it now.
Oh,
we were on property. We were the it's called a deed in lieu of foreclosure.
Okay. That's a whole nother
It is. It's a whole nother. Yeah.
Because not every time you buy a mortgage note are you owning the property.
No, you just own the debt. So that's what we bought the debt, we owned the debt, and then it was non-performing. So we were either going to foreclose and take it back.
It was already non-performing, right? Okay.
Or I was going to reach out to her and say, look, instead of me foreclosing, how about I throw you a couple bucks and you sign the house over, and we'll waive the property, or we'll waive any foreclosures.
So that was like the perfect scenario.
The perfect scenario.
Right, and that's what got you started in this industry.
Hook, line, and sinker, right?
I understand. They're like, ooh, where can I find more?
Exactly. And I called them up and I was like, hey, do you have any more of those? And it turns out it was a hedge fund called Condor Capital out of California, and they just buy and sell debt. And so they had like $300 or $400 million under management from overseas, and they were just buying up tons and tons of debt, right? But they only had like 15 people or 20 people working there, so they weren't working the mortgages. They're just buying them and then putting them out and selling them. So we were like, yeah, we'll
send us more.
Hey, what do you have?
I love that.
So we just started buying in Florida, Orlando.
That's super cool. Okay, well that helps me understand how you got into this here. So explain to me. So I'm a real estate agent. I sell primarily in the Central Florida market, but I have agents across the state of Florida. How is Paperstac beneficial to me as an agent?
So right now you may or may not be aware that it's extremely competitive in the real estate market, right?
Right.
Like people offering 20-30% over list and still not getting it. So that makes it difficult for people who are buying and selling real estate as investors.
Right, exactly. I have a whole list of investors that I work with, and I've worked with for years, and it's been the most challenging market right now because we're not going to overpay for an investment.
No.
You know, obviously somebody going to live in the home and it's their personal residence, they might be in there in a longer term. It's different, that conversation, and when you evaluate the numbers versus strictly an investment. So it's been quite challenging, and I have a lot of my investors sitting on the sidelines. So so how can Paperstac help them?
So it's another way to, like I said, start buying real estate, or to get your dollars out there and get them working for you instead of just, you know, maybe in the roller coaster of the stock market. If you can say, look, I want to buy some performing debt, or I want to buy some non-performing debt,
right?
And work it that way. It's just it's sort of another tool to add to the investment belt of saying, okay, I need to change gears a little bit. Real estate market is getting really insanely hot. What does that do? Well, it makes it to where most of the mortgages are not underwater anymore.
Right.
So if you buy something non-performing, it was underwater at one point because it was only worth X amount of dollars, but the real estate market's been so hot, it lifted that.
Right.
And so it makes it to where it's like, look, I want to go ahead and get that property back. Or, you know what, I can modify this. If I can buy something at 50 cents or 60 cents on the dollar, have the borrower say, look, you know, pay me 10 grand and I'll modify your loan for you. And I can turn around and sell it at 85 cents or 90 cents on the dollar.
So what I would think, again, as a layman, that's just learning about mortgage notes, is I would think, because I've always thought that notes are, you know, you're only going to benefit from a note when people default, right? So as an investor, I would think, oh, well, the market's doing so great, nobody's going to default because they have all this equity in their home. Maybe now wouldn't be the time to buy a mortgage note, but that's not correct.
No, it's not, especially like right now. So think about what we just, the past 18 months have been for us. It's been like insane amounts of pandemic, right?
And we're a massive feeder market from buyers from all over the country and the world.
Right, and so there's people who are, you know, the economy is doing well, but there's people who just haven't been making their payments, and there's been moratoriums on eviction, there's been moratoriums on foreclosure.
Interesting, because I mean, a lot of the people that are in that foreclosure world, the short sale world, they're already, you know, saying that there's going to be this big wave coming. So
there is.
That would affect you as well at Paperstac.
It does. It's great. Like,
okay, interesting.
We do very well when the market's hot. Everybody kind of does well when the market's hot, but when the market tanks, like, it sucks because people lose their houses, but it's great for us because there's just so much inventory, and then the activity of buying just steps up so much.
So, but right now the market's hot and people have more equity than ever, but you're still saying that those people that maybe were in forbearance, they didn't understand the programs, they're still not paying, they lost their jobs, they're just so far behind.
Well, the STEMI checks are kind of gone, and some of that the government.
But what if they have equity in their home, and can't they just go back to the bank and say, hey, let's take the equity out and I'll get up to date?
They could, but the banks are like, why am I going to give you equity out of the house when you haven't been paying, right? It's like, oh,
I'm going to give you more money, and who's to say you're going to keep paying? You might just take that money and peace out.
Right. Well, what happened back in 2005, 6, 7? People got a tons of equity. The bank gave them their equity, and they were buying boats and BMWs.
Okay, I see. So even though that could be the case, a lender may not still, because they're looking at their track record, they're like, I can't trust you.
It's not only that they can't even trust you, it's like at some point there's like credit worthiness of the borrowers, and so
they've already ruined that.
Yeah, there's credit boxes that they have to fit into, and if they don't fit into the credit box, then all of a sudden that loan can't be securitized. If that loan can't be securitized, it can't be moved off the books.
So now Paperstac comes in and says, looks at these opportunities to potentially buy these mortgage notes.
We don't actually buy them. We're an open marketplace. But we have tons of buyers and sellers. So we have like 9,000 registered users on the platform who are actively buying and selling debt. And it's literally everybody from...
So those opportunities would be listed on the Paperstac platform.
Yeah, they're on there now.
And you'd be, as a buyer, be able to go on there and kind of just check it out.
Yeah, you can get on there, register for free, and just start looking at assets and seeing if it's something you like.
And does it have any sort of a calculation on projected ROI at all, or is that something
it does? It does some yield calculations if it's performing based on how many payments are left, what's the interest rate, what's the discount, and all that.
Interesting.
Kind of
You're gonna have to help me buy my first mortgage note.
Of course.
I want the best one. Okay.
The best one. I got one at 16.99%. That it's like, what do you want out of it? Just put that one. Just like let that pay you.
Really? Okay. We'll talk about that a little bit. So, what are the different ways that somebody like me could invest in a mortgage note?
So there's a couple different ways. You can obviously use your own capital, like your checking account money or your self-directed retirement accounts, 401ks, IRAs, and buy the loan directly, or you can invest in a fund, right? So there's funds out there who just all they do is buy and sell debt.
It's kind of like the stock market.
It is, but so imagine this: if I buy one note, you know, maybe I've got $100,000 and I'm going to buy one loan. If that one loan stops paying, now my money is all like it stops working until I can either get them paying again or I get the house back. If I take that same $100,000 and I put it in with a fund that's doing it, well, now my risk is spread out over all the assets, right? And so if one of them stops paying, you're like, well, whatever, that's like 0.5% of the portfolio. We're good. The downside to a fund is obviously the fund's making money. So if the fund is making money, you're not making the full amount of money. But the upside is, look, you've got professionals who are handling it. They're doing all the stuff that you may have to manage as a note owner, and then you're getting to take advantage of, they're probably buying loans in bulk, and so you get to take advantage of any discounts that they're getting.
As a note owner, do you guys also offer services for that management process?
We don't.
But you can refer.
But there's tons
who
of
can manage it, and at the most appropriate
and we do
rates,
that a lot.
Things like that.
We do that a lot and say, look, here's the servicers that we work with, or here's some funds that we partnered up with, or funds that we like. Look, these are funds that are performing, and we'll take. A lot of times we get a lot of people who are transitioning from real estate into notes, or they're just adding it to their tool belt, and so they need help. And Brett's really good.
So you're suggesting essentially that as an investor in real estate, it's great to diversify, right? Which we 100%. Always say regardless.
Yeah.
It's great to diversify. Even my investors that buy short-term and long-term rentals, different things. So having traditional real estate as well as some mortgage notes can be a great way to have multiple things working for you.
Exactly. You should always diversify.
Exactly. Right? And let's just say somebody does default, just as an average, what do you expect in terms of how long it would take to potentially acquire that property in full to then decide to be able to resell it or something?
So there's two factors, or there's really one factor. It's like, look, is it in a judicial state like Florida?
Okay, let's talk about Florida.
Florida means if it's judicial that you have to go through foreclosure. You have to go through the court system,
which can take
a year and a half. Or if it's in a non-judicial state, like maybe Georgia or North Carolina, it's called a sheriff's deed sale, and that can take like 90 days.
Interesting. So Paperstac works in all these states?
Yes.
How many states?
50.
50?
Yes.
And what are your favorite states to buy notes in? It must have been one of those states that are quicker to turn around.
Well, I love Florida.
Okay.
Because I'm always a fan of, I know the area very well, and I don't think anybody else can do a better job managing than I can. Like, naturally, you just think you can do a better job. So if I have to go talk to a borrower, it's like when you show up on their front doorstep and say, hey, look, I live in this town.
Right.
You're either paying or you're getting out, and let me work with you. That's powerful. But I love North Carolina. Texas is great. Arizona. Georgia has got some licensing stuff. So you either have to be licensed there or do some workarounds. I mean, how about this? There's states that I don't like.
Okay, let's talk about those.
New York.
Okay.
Pennsylvania, a lot of the stuff up in the Northeast, like
Is
Maine.
it just so convoluted, so difficult, or why?
It's the lengthy foreclosure timelines.
I mean, it takes forever just to close a traditional real estate transaction in some of these states, specifically New York. I've heard of a few clients that it's just taking forever.
It is, and some of them are very borrower centric. So
they don't want them to be
right
in those positions.
And so they
want to protect them.
really try to protect the borrowers, regardless of if they're derelicts or not.
Right.
So
okay.
You know what I mean?
I understand.
So we'll stay out. Like I typically try to avoid New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois. There's like Cook County is really difficult, just because not only the foreclosure stuff, but once you get the property back, there's all these little townships, and man, they're like, it's like nickel and dime you for like everything. Like, oh, you need to turn the power on. Well, you got to have the $300 inspection.
It's just a headache. So if you're getting into, mortgage note investing, probably best to focus on some of these other states that have a little bit of a better process that you mentioned.
Yeah, it's, like I said, North Carolina's great. Florida's really good, straightforward.
Texas,
Georgia.
Is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Let's see here. So as a tech company, let me see. How to change the way people invest in mortgage notes. Okay. So you are powered by technology here at Paperstac. So as a tech company, how have you changed the way that people are easily able to purchase mortgage notes versus how they used to do them?
So before everything prior to Paperstac, it was email and spreadsheets, right? So I'm going to get a spreadsheet of assets, and I'm going to email it out to people. So if you weren't on that email list, you never had a chance to see it. And when we got into the market, we kind of got connected with a fund right away that had assets. But you kind of realize very quickly that we bought all of our assets from that fund. And so the pricing, you didn't have anything else to match it up against. And so we're like, well, we need to see what else is out there. And I was like, well, is there like an MLS for notes? And there wasn't. And so we've changed it, and we've kind of democratized the system to where anybody can go and look at a note.
Put a note in too, right, for sale.
And the market will dictate what it's worth. And so we've helped out buyers by giving them inventory. We've helped out sellers by achieving like fair market value. But then we've also streamlined the process and added a lot of security and transparency, like we talked about with the escrow and with the collateral audit. And then we've made it to where it's an automated to-do list. So you can't go from step 1 to step 3 without doing step 2. So if it's your first time buying a note, you know that you're going to go in and buy the note and you won't miss a step. You can't miss a step.
Right.
And so we've made it almost like a teaching tool for people to get into it. Yeah.
And what is like on the lowest end of a note you can potentially purchase versus some of the highest price point notes you've seen? Let's go back. One other question. Can you buy residential and commercial notes?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so then commercial can go crazy in price points. We were talking about a $4 million property a little earlier.
Right. But I've seen people buy and sell $1,000 notes on the platform.
$1,000?
A second position $1,000 note.
So second position, that's a whole nother conversation.
It is, but you would think, why would anybody want to be in?
Why would somebody want to be in second position?
So you'd be shocked at how many people have had 2 loans, right? And they're paying on the first, and it kind of makes it to where if there's no equity in there, the second is not going to try to foreclose because there's a first position loan. Well, what happened over the past 24, 36 months, the real estate market went insane. So all of a sudden now there's equity in all these properties, even including a second that hasn't been paid on. And so now if you bought a second for really cheap, 10 cents on the dollar.
The first gets covered.
The first is covered. And you call up the homeowner and you say, hey, look, I'm going to foreclose on you because there's all this equity here, and I can, all this equity here allows me to come in there and buy this. I can take the house from you.
Right.
So it allows you to go ahead and jump in there and start handling the borrower. So yeah, second position, you would think like I would never want a second.
Right.
Like, no.
But for only $1,000.
Yeah, $1,000.
I mean, if you look at the numbers.
That's not the average, but we're talking the low side.
So you're saying super low. I mean, you can start investing in notes at a very low rate, a price point.
Yeah, typically right now is a decent time for seconds. Before this, you'd be like, it was a numbers game, right? So it'd be like
because there wasn't as much equity,
right? And so you'd buy it and you say, look, I'm gonna come after you and I'm gonna start able to tax your paycheck. And if I get a judgment against you, you can start doing that. So that's not the standard anymore. Like right now, it's just such a great time because there's so much equity that you can get in there and people will just be like, okay, yeah, I'll start paying on it.
So cool. I love this. So interesting. So I want to buy a mortgage note. Now, I can buy it cash, but can I also finance a mortgage note?
It's not the norm, but yeah, there's leveraging.
Okay.
There's leveraging tools out there to where you can buy with leverage. And typically, it would happen if you're going to buy a bunch of them at once. But yeah, there's people out there right now who are actually offering financing on mortgage notes.
Because the rates are quite low, so to tack that on to another one, the numbers could still potentially look really good.
Oh, huge! Because you can. You can do an arbitrage play to where if look, I'm paying 3% for my money, but I got a 10% loan.
Right.
There's a 7%.
That's what I mean.
There's a 7% delta there that it's it makes sense.
Interesting. So there are options like
there
that
are
if you're
options out there.
interested and really wanting to get involved in this space.
Yes, there definitely are. It's something that's it's really came up over the past 12 months.
So it's a newer thing. Traditionally, it was always cash.
It was just you buy it cash, yeah. There was definitely some leveraging plays out there for institutions, but not on individual loans, but now it's available.
So tell me, what is the biggest risk? How can I lose my money? Tell me what deal would potentially get me to lose my investment.
So there's three things that you kind of look at. Taxes, right? So if something's got terrible taxes, insane amount of past due taxes that you don't look for.
Past due
taxes.
Okay, so is that something that the platform would tell me?
No, that you have to
do your own research.
Do your own research and
disclaimer,
due diligence.
disclosure,
Yes.
all the things, guys.
Yes, disclaimer. You do all the buyers on the platform do their own research.
Okay.
We're just there to make sure, a title company's not typically going out and saying, what's the rehab on this property, right? They're just saying, look, we'll hold the money, we'll draft the documents.
Understood.
We'll make sure
So you have to do your own research. So essentially, you have to double check that they've been paying their taxes then.
Right, and so I would order an ownership and encumbrance report coupled with a tax report.
Okay.
So taxes will get you. Title, any sort of title defects, if there's a break in the chain, the assignment of mortgage, maybe you're missing one. So that could get you.
That can get tricky.
Yep, and so the title report will take care of that. And then finally, it would be the Blythe, which is if all the properties in the neighborhood have boarded up windows, you don't want to be buying necessarily in there because it's going to bring down your value.
Right, and the potential of it, and the potential of, let's just say you did acquire it, getting it resold and getting your investment out may be more challenging.
Right, it's just, you just got to, if you do get the property back, you got to understand, it's okay.
You still have to sell it.
You still got to sell it.
Make money.
So you got to make your money, exactly. And if it's in, if it's in a neighborhood where there's bars on the windows or there's wood over the windows, and there's a chance that, if it's vacant.
So just like in real estate, we're going to check the comps for investors. We're going to look at the comps in case they have to unload the asset. We want to make sure, what does that look like for them? So same thing with the mortgage note. So we're going to check the taxes, we're going to check the title, and then we're going to also make sure that that particular location has the potential for the resale.
Exactly.
So those are the three things that can protect you when purchasing a mortgage note.
Exactly. Nailed it. You're like a pro now.
I love it. I'm learning all this stuff. I'm going to start being a mortgage note pro. Okay. So, as we mentioned, this market can be a little tough for some investors. And I have a long list of investors that I work with. So I constantly want to be educating them and bringing them new opportunities. So as an agent, how can I work together with Paperstac to connect my buyers to you and still potentially benefit?
The easiest thing to do is to create your own account, right?
Okay.
And get on there and start looking at notes, getting familiar with a mortgage note. What am I looking at here? And just kind of understanding it a little bit. And then I found just talking to investors are typically, they got their ears open, and when they hear about interesting opportunities, they'll start learning about it. And so you can start talking to them, hey, have you heard about buying notes? Have you ever considered buying notes? This is so cool. And then if you start bringing them notes, there's a way for you to have a brokering function on there to where you
on the Paperstac platform.
And they don't actually necessarily even have to have an account.
Okay.
For the platform, and you can really run a transaction.
Can I send them deals
you
from
can send them deals, you can show them deals, and then you can help them close something without them actually being a user of the platform. Everything, you can send them paperwork to get signed, and so you can start making a commission on
What are the commissions that you usually see?
Some people are making, it depends. Some people are making 3%, 6%. Some people are making a lot more than that, just depending, like if they're like, okay, this is a really good deal, I'm gonna close on it, like, and maybe they close on it and it's like a 17% return, and they've got a pile of investors who are happy with like 8% returns, and they're closing on it and then just turning around and reselling it to them, and they're saying, I want to make sure it's performing this and that. So they're putting some of their money out, they're putting some risk, but they're also making a huge upside.
So could they just take a one-time fee, or could they potentially invest in it together?
100%. Yeah, that's a lot. I've seen agents do that to where they say, look,
so you can build your own mortgage note portfolio by just bringing great opportunities to your investors and both being on those notes.
Yeah, you can do that. You can kind of build your own.
Interesting. So in regards to the fee, is it something that would be marketed, like I'm looking and I see, they're going to offer 3%, or is it something that I would say, I want X for this deal?
So the way it would work is some of the sellers on there would pay you, but most of them, they're going to be like, this is the price.
Build it in yourself.
Build it in yourself. And so you would build it in there, and then when Paperstac generates the paperwork, we put that fee in there, and your seller only sees like this is the net price.
So you're communicating as the agent with Paperstac, saying, I found this deal, I have a buyer for it, this is what I'm going to be taking out of this deal, this is what the buyer is expecting of the deal.
Like the seller won't even see it. So like the seller only sees, okay, they're paying $30,000 for this, and you say, well, I'm putting a $3,000 fee on there, and so whenever it generates the paperwork for somebody to sign, it just shows $33,000. It doesn't show the makeup of it.
So is there a fee to join and be a part of the Paperstac platform?
It's free to sign up. It's free to get started. We only make a point from the buyer and a point from the seller when a deal closes.
Very cool. And that's really not a lot. That's not a heavy fee.
No, it's not.
To be the connector and be providing this great service.
Right. It's super affordable, which is why we have people who have been doing business together for 30 years who are doing business on Paperstac. Like
even though they've done business together, they don't have to pay the fee.
They do it because we make their life easier.
It's so much easier. It's a service, right? It's making their life easier. So again, as a real estate professional, no matter where you are in the country, you can essentially get into mortgage note investing, as well as educating your client base on how to get into this and still potentially profit. Whether you're getting a fee or you're doing a JV with that potential investor.
That's right.
Super cool. Okay, so I just learned so much about mortgage note investing, and we're going to continue this conversation.
For sure.
Absolutely. So help everybody understand, how can they connect with you? What's the best way to get started and become, start getting educated about Paperstac?
Easiest way is to go to paperstac.com,
Okay.
paperstac.com, sign up. It's free to start searching and looking and just getting an idea there. We've got a YouTube channel, as you're probably on it right now, you can see. And we offer tons of free education. We're always on there just, dropping knowledge bombs on people.
That's what we got to do. Keep dropping knowledge bombs.
That's it. Just dropping it out there and just kind of showing, we've been doing it for a decade. So teaching people what we know.
I love it. Well, I hope you guys learned something today, and we'd love to hear more about how you're getting involved in mortgage note investing. So drop some comments below. Let us know what you thought about this video. Let us know what else you want to learn.
Yes.
And share your success stories with us so we can keep educating and sharing more great knowledge.